Good morning. Do you have your coffee? My name is Pastor Mike. I am the worship pastor at the Kalispell First Church of the Nazarene. Today I want to talk to you about leading volunteers. He was a youth pastor for many, many years. I was also a children's pastor. And in those years that I was in worship ministry, youth ministry, children's ministry, one thing that I had the privilege of being a part of was the lives of volunteers. At any given time, I was in charge of up to 30 volunteers under my pastorate. I currently have a worship team of about 10 wonderful volunteers, and it is an absolute blessing to lead a group of people who love ministry so much that they're willing to do it for free. We call that the laity of the church, or as we will just call them volunteers today. I have just a handful of things that I want to talk about that I've learned over the years in leading volunteers. And the first one is this: don't expect excellence if you're not willing to be excellent. And what I mean by that is this. I'm not saying don't expect perfection, because as far as I know, there's only been one perfect human being, and that's the one we serve, Jesus Christ. But what I mean by excellence is this: it has to do with effort. Don't expect someone, a volunteer, a person in your congregation, to give 100% of effort in whatever it is that you're leading if you're not willing to give 100% into that situation. I know that I've done this in my past, and I've seen this with other leaders, is that leaders often will give orders, but they're not willing to put in the same amount of effort. What we like to do is we like to tell our volunteers to do the kinds of things that we don't really find fun, or we don't find enjoyable. Hey, you go stack the chairs, or you go clean up the popcorn in the sanctuary after movie night. I don't want to do those kinds of things. And so I think that if we want to expect excellence amongst our volunteers, we have to be willing to put forth that much effort as well. Your volunteers will only give... Look, nobody probably is more... nobody is more committed than we are, right? I mean, we signed our name on the line. We've given ourselves over to the ministry. And a lot of times we're the people who are the most excited about the ministry that we're providing. If we're not putting forth much effort, we can't expect that from our volunteers. Leaders must be willing to shepherd the people under them and inspire them to give their best, because we serve the Lord. What we are doing for the Lord. You remember from Colossians 3:23-24, it says, "Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord, not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your sweet reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." So sometimes we have to remind ourselves, hey, what we're doing for the Lord. And as we give our excellence, we do so by example, and hopefully that would inspire the volunteers underneath us to give excellently. Secondly, I have a friend, and he's what I would consider... Secondly, I have a friend who I consider to be a great leader. He's an incredible layman. He's a very successful businessman. He serves in the church. He serves on church boards. He helps people wherever he goes. And he has this motto for leaders: don't expect what you're not willing to inspect. Don't inspect what you're not willing to inspect. And what Joe Coco means by that is lazy leaders tend to give orders, like we just said, and then just walk away. Hey, I want you to do this thing, and we walk away. And then when the job isn't done to our standard, or we aren't satisfied with the job that has been done, we often get angry. I knew a guy who used to get angry at his volunteers, and he'd say, look, I don't need you. I want you, but I don't need you. So if you don't step up, I'll find somebody else who will do the job. And on one hand, that kind of sounds cool, doesn't it? I mean, we're the guys and the gals in charge, and we can, we tell you what to do and you do it. But that isn't servant leadership, and that isn't Christ-like leadership. Oftentimes, volunteers get discouraged because maybe they did the best that they could, but we didn't do our part in leading them. As leaders of volunteers, we really should be shepherding them. We shouldn't expect them to just know how to do the things that we've been doing for years. Those of you who are in university right now learning how to do ministry, think of all the knowledge you're gaining because you've had a professor who is a master in your field teaching you these things. And our volunteers, they just haven't had that opportunity. And so we get to be the professors, so to speak. As leaders, we should guide our volunteers, offering help, not nagging, but offering them help and training. I love what Doug Fields always says about bringing a volunteer along with you. You have them come and watch you do, and then you do that thing together, and then they're equipped to go and do that thing that you want them to do. You're basically raising up disciples. And I like that. I really like that. And I really thank Doug Fields for all that he's done for the church. We're making disciples. We're not making servants. When I was a young youth pastor, I had called a youth, When I was a young worship pastor, I remember we'd have, I remember when I was a young worship pastor, I had called practice on Thursday night. That's when we did our practices, Thursday night. One day, I show up to practice and nobody else showed up. Not one person. Nobody called, nobody texted, nobody emailed, just nobody came. I kind of thought it was funny. I went over to my pastor's house. He lived in the parsonage, and I said, you're not going to believe this, but nobody came to practice tonight. Isn't that hilarious? He didn't think it was hilarious. And in a very stern way, he started to tell me how that was my fault. That the reason why the practice wasn't successful, or the practice didn't happen at all, was because I didn't shepherd the people. And I said, well, how can I make people come? I received a lesson that day. The lesson was, if you don't know your people, if you don't know your volunteers, what's going on in their lives, how can you bring them along? Don't expect what you're not willing to inspect. So I called a meeting that Sunday and I said, guys, look, nobody came to practice. What's going on in your lives? And what I found out was this. There were marriages that were broken. There were children from family members who were wayward. I found out from my volunteers that their lives were in ruin. But see, I wasn't looking for that. All I was looking for was, why didn't you come and do the thing that I asked you to do? That was a hard lesson learned. I think of 1 Peter 5, 1 through 3, where it says, I think of 1 Peter 5, where Peter is talking about this specific thing. So I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you. Love your volunteers, encourage them, pour into them, and you will have a team that is unstoppable. Well, I hope you had good coffee this morning, and I wish you a wonderful day. Grace and peace to you.